Okay, we're going to work on lesson 4.4. We're learning about slope-intercept form. So our warm-up, let's go quickly through this. It's graph the linear equation using the input-output table. We're actually not going to take the time to graph it right now, but I'm going to tell you how. So the first thing is, they told us, this is pretty much exactly like your quiz. They're asking us to graph this line, y equals x minus 1. We can make a table, or they use this input-output table. If I put 0 in for x, y would equal 0 minus 1, which is, what's 0 minus 1? Negative 1. So y would be negative 1. If I put 1 in for x, 1 minus 1 is 0. If I put 2 in for x, 2 minus 1 is, and if I put 3 in for x, 3 minus 1 is. So really, that's kind of like what you just did on that pop quiz. We made the 4 columns. We did an x, the equation, y, then the coordinates. But it's essentially what you just did here. Right now, one of my coordinates is 0, negative 1. X is 0, y is negative 1. My other coordinate would have been 1, 0. 2, 1. 3, 2. You plot those points on there and connect the line. So we do number 2. This time, they give us a fraction. What I found with my other classes, don't try and do the mental math, especially when it's working with a fraction. Show your work. So if x is negative 2, we would have done a half times negative 2, and we write that as a fraction. Negative 2 over 1. Which is negative 2 over 2, which equals negative 1. And then we have to add our plus 2. Negative 1 plus 2 equals 1 whole. So y is 1. Do the same thing now with each one. If I put 0 in, half times 0 plus 2. Half times 0 is 0 plus 2 is 2. Half times 2, and I'm going to make it 2 over 1, equals, what's a half times 2 over 1? It'd be, well, 1 times 2 is, and 2 times 1 is, so 2 over 2 is, okay. See why I ask you to do the work, don't do it in your head. Sometimes some of us were thinking the answer was 2, but when you did the work, you're like, oh, it's 1. Like, you even said, oh, I'm like, no, it's simple. So show your work. Then we still have to add our 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. And then we do the same thing with 4. A half times 4 over 1, which would give me, thank you, 4 over 2. Which is equal to, good. We add our 2 and we get, once again, so Ben, what would be this coordinate then?
It would be negative 2 over 1.
Negative 2 over 1. Well, not over, just negative 2 over 1. What would be this one? Agree? 0, 2. All right, Wade, what would be this next one?
Parentheses, 2, 3.
I was even going to call you out on that, you're thinking. Alright, the last one. Parker. 4, 4.
I'm not as fancy as
no one can be as fancy as Wade. Okay, what do we know about slope-intercept form? Okay, we probably don't know what that fully is, but what do we know about this phrase right here, slope-intercept form? What can you pull out of it? Okay, slope. What is slope?
Steepness.
The steepness. Okay, slope. We're talking about the steepness. Or the rate. Good. What's intercept mean? Where they're meeting or they cross. Okay. So meet, cross, intersect. And then form, that means it's going to be the equation. So we're going to learn to write an equation that tells us about the steepness and where the line will cross one of the axis points. Here's our goal. I will graph linear equations in slope-intercept form. This is why I like this big ideas paper. If you look here, they have the lesson. They pretty much walk you through this all. So if you're confused, go back and look at this. They give you all the great examples. We have key ideas. I'm going to write some stuff to the side. I'm going to have you guys follow along with me. But the key thing first, intercepts. X-intercept. It's the x-intercept of a line is the x-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the x-axis when y equals 0. So my biggest thing I'm going to write over here, I'm going to take notes, and I would suggest you do too so you can help yourself. When I ask you what is the x-intercept, we want to know where line crosses x-axis. If we look at their picture, here was the x-intercept. The line crossed the x-axis at this point right here. An important detail that we need to know is when we have any coordinates that cross the x-axis, we know for sure one of those coordinates is 0. That the y-coordinate will always be 0. Because remember, the y-coordinate is the one that tells us how far above or how far below the x-axis we go. Our rise or how far we drop down. Well, if it's 0, we won't do any of it. So, y-axis is always 0. We're going to look at the y-intercept now. Any ideas what you think y-intercept is going to be? Yeah, pretty much the exact opposite. X-intercepts where the line crosses the x-axis and y equals 0. For the y-intercept, it's where the line crosses the y-axis and the x is 0. So I'm going to even write that one up here. Y-intercept. Key point where line crosses the y-axis. And on this one, we know our x is going to equal 0. Because remember, our x-coordinate tells us how far left or how far right of the y-axis we go. So if we have it at 0, we don't leave that line. We hit it. Here's their example right here. That coordinate is on the y-axis. So it's our y-intercept, and we call it 0, and then B is our y-intercept. An important thing you are going to use today. One, you're going to have to be able to look at a graph and tell me where the y-intercept is and where the x-intercept is. And then we're going to have to work with slope-intercept form. And I promise you, if you pay attention, you'll get it. I feel like slope-intercept form is the easiest one to work with. So, just put on my desk.
I didn't do number. I forgot. I didn't do number.
So, on slope-intercept form, a linear equation written in the form of y equals mx plus b is in slope-intercept form. The slope of the line is m and the y-intercept of the line is b. They even show us right here, they write it out, but I'm going to write it because I find the more I write, the better I have of remembering it. So I'm going to say, not using a highlighter though, I'm going to go ahead and write y equals mx plus b. The important thing to note, we should have already learned y equals mx. M is our slope. It tells us our steepness. The part we're adding is this plus b. And that's going to tell us where our y-intercept is. The great thing is if I have my slope-intercept form, I can graph the line. It's very, very easy. Yes?
Does m, like, no matter what, does it always equal slope and b always equals y?
Yep.
So, like,
So when we put it in this form, yeah.
so, like, you can't put any other letter in for slope.
Take notes.
You can. It's just we know that m is slope. You're going to see later when we talk about something, they're going to use a for like direct variation, y equals ax. And it's supposed to be the constant of something, but it's the same idea. But the reason we want to learn m and b is those are the ones that they use. We can technically, I can use any variable I want, but this is the accepted one that they go by. Okay, so once again, this is why I like big ideas, because now what they're going to do is an example. Anytime we look at here and they give us an example, they show me all the work that needs to be done. They give me a question, they give me the work so you can follow along. So the question is, and you're going to do this in a second, find the slope and y-intercept. So they want me to look at a line, they want me to identify. The equation is y equals negative 4x minus 2. Once again, because it's asking me about slope-intercept form, I'm going to write that down. Y equals mx plus b. My first question is this equation, y equals negative 4x minus 2, is that written in slope-intercept form? Is y by itself? Yeah, y equals, do they have the slope, negative 4x, and then minus another number? Yeah, so we're okay. Let's identify. The slope, it is said right in slope-intercept form. It's already done that way. So all I have to do is look for my slope. We know this is slope. We know this is y-intercept. Oh man, I did my colors backwards. I know. Just a failure at life sometimes. Okay.
I can relate.
So this is how easy it is. What is the coefficient that came before the x? If we think about y and x, remember, y and x, these are just my coordinates. This is my y coordinate, this is an x coordinate. So now we've identified everything in the line. If I ask you what the slope is, what comes before the x? The negative 4. So I would say my slope, you will write m equals negative 4. M stands for slope. Slope is negative 4. For y-intercept, I can just write b. And what is my y-intercept, Parker?
Negative 2.
It is negative 2. Now, notice in our equation we said plus b. And this said minus 2. But remember, it's saying, like, if I wrote it, it would have been plus a negative 2. I don't have to have a positive and a negative. It just comes out. Adding a negative is the same thing as just subtracting. But that sign stays with the number. So they do another one for us. Y minus 5 equals 3/2 x. We write in slope-intercept form. Is this one in slope-intercept form? Is y minus 5 equals 3/2 x? Is that in slope-intercept form?
No.
Sure.
No. Because we did not solve for just y. So we have to solve this equation. This is why we tell you math continually builds on itself. We've done this before. To get y by itself, I have to add 5 to each side. And then after I do that, now I'm left with y equals 3/2 x plus 5. Now can you identify the slope? Now that I'm in that form, my slope comes in front of my x. 3/2. My y-intercept is at the end. I'm adding 5. That is my answer. So, real quick, I want you guys to try this for me. This is showing me, do you understand what we're doing? Number 1 and 2. What is the slope of number 1? Don't shout it out. Just write it down. And then what is the y-intercept? On number 2, we want the same thing. We'll give you a hint. On number 2, you may have to rewrite your equation so it's in slope-intercept form. But for right now, go ahead and everyone look at number 1. Identify the slope and the y-intercept for me. Question, or do you think you have the answer?
I have state to tell you. I have that chart thing that I didn't copy down.
Oh, okay.
For number 1.
Okay, fine.
But I also
Ryan, Parker, you guys have the answers?
No, I just got a question. I can't find it on here.
I have the answer too.
Oh, never mind. I found it. Okay, thank you.
Alright, let's go ahead and look.
Well, I have the answers either way, but
Okay, number 1. Miles, you chatterbox. What do you think the slope is on number 1? It is 3. It is the variable, it's the coefficient that came before the variable x. What is my slope? It is -7. Okay, make sure you say -7. You have to use that sign that went with it. What?
I thought
M is slope. -7 is our y-intercept. Okay, number 2. Is this in slope-intercept form?
no.
So I have to change it. I have to get y by itself. So I'm going to add 1 to each side. I'd get y equals -2/3 x. I forgot the x. Plus 1. Good. Now I'm in slope-intercept form. 1y. I have a coefficient in x and then plus 1. So I have my slope-intercept forms listed in there. What is my slope on this equation, Ainsley?
-2/3.
-2/3. Perfect. It is the one that came right before my x. It's my coefficient. What is my slope? Was what I just asked you. What is my y-intercept? Ryan? 1, or a positive 1. So if you wanted to write positive 1, that's okay. If you just say 1, that's okay.
That would make me more satisfied if you did.
Okay. If you can do that, graphing this becomes very easy. That's what example 2. This is the last one we're going to do. Example 2 is all about how do we graph. And it's really easy. First thing, they're asking me to graph this equation. Oh, but be careful. Then they want me to identify the x-intercept. So it's asking me for 2 questions. First step, I take my line and I have to identify the slope. So I'm always going to write that to the side when I look at my line and my y-intercept. So I look at the equation. I'm going to write it over here just so it's bigger. Y equals -3x plus 3. And Sabina, I'm going to try picking on you a little bit. If I have y equals -3x plus 3, what do you think my slope is? Where was it always coming before? Yeah, where's our slope always coming from? Remember, this is our equation, y equals mx plus b. This is slope-intercept form, right? This m is our slope, right? B is our y-intercept. So if I put these numbers in, y equals negative 3x plus 3, what would be my slope? Yes, the negative 3, because it's right in front of our x. That's our coefficient. Slope is negative 3. What is my y-intercept? Kayla. Yeah. Here's my y-intercept here. So I go to this part right here. It is 3. I put positive 3 for you, Parker. Now the next part, this is the easiest part. Because we just identified that the y-intercept is 3, we can go and plot that. We go to our grid. And y-intercept goes on the y-axis. And we said it's 3. So 1, 2, 3, it's right here. Slope-intercept form, it tells us where the y-intercept is. We can put that point down. We can write the coordinates 0, 3. And that's what, once again, this part just told us. That was my y-intercept. Then, our slope. I'm going to use gray so you don't see it as much, but our slope was negative 3, and if we put it as a fraction, it's negative 3 over 1, which means go down 3 and 1 to the right. So I start at this y-intercept and I go 1, 2, 3. I go over 1, 1. There is my next point. We have 2 points, we can graph it. I can go ahead and do another point if I wanted. 1, 2, 3, over 1. It would be here. Then all you do is connect your dots. So now I have graphed it. The other part of the question was, where is the x-intercept? Well, remember, this is my x-axis. Where did our line cross our x-axis? It crossed it right here. So where is that? What's that coordinate point? It's 1, what? You're right. That's on the x-axis. It's over 1. And then what's the y? Right? 0. We did not leave. Remember, x-axis, our x-intercept will not leave the x-axis. So, the line crosses at 1, 0. The x-intercept is 1. On this equation, the one that we just graphed, y equals negative 3x plus 3. We identified slope and y-intercept. You plot the y-intercept. We said it was 3, so we went up 3. And then we did our slope, down 3 over 1. We drew our line. And then we said, what is the x-intercept? Where did the line cross the x-axis? It crossed it right here at 1, 0. So x is 1. Okay, I'm going to give you your homework for the day. Couple things. If you look up here, because I want to make sure you understand this, because there's a couple parts I'm changing. One, you do have to grid a couple. You can use a grid paper, or if you go to My Content Library, you'd have to copy it over. But I made this little tab that says grid paper. So you can go to My Content Library, go to today's, and you can right-click and copy that over, and you can do it on OneNote if you want. Otherwise, your assignment, I'm letting you skip the review and refresh, but what I want you to do is numbers 9, this is also on Schoology, through 13. Number 14 through 22 even. Number 23 and 25 through 30. Now, even. Now, this sounds like a lot, but because I'm having you do evens, it's only about 14 or 15 questions you're doing. And if you look at what they are, 9 and 10 is where you have to graph. 11, 12, and 13, you're just matching up. Which one of these would match up here? Biggest hint, always identify the slope and the y-intercept. So like on 13, I'm going to give you a hint already. I'm going to look for the line that has the slope of negative 2/3 and the y-intercept of 1. So could A be number 13? No, because if the y-intercept was 1, that's here. That line's not crossing at 1, so I know A does not go to 13. Oh, I did forget to tell the other class. These, you just have to identify the slope and the y-intercept like we did earlier. I will make 34. It says dig deeper. It's a little harder. If you want to do that, totally optional. I'll make it a bonus. Yeah?
We should
All
be
right.
able to add 10